Have you ever seen one of these before? Years ago, I was on an archaeological expedition in Israel, and we were at a freshly discovered site which hadn't been excavated yet on the west side of the Jezreel Valley. Other people know it as Armageddon, the Valley of Armageddon. And I was walking along with the rest of the team, and must have been 20 people went in front of me, but when I came up on the path, I saw this little square piece of rock buried flush with the surface of the ground and a hole in the middle filled with dirt. I thought, what's that? So I dug it out and cleaned it off, and was quite surprised to see that it was a little square piece of stone, maybe inch and a half thick, and with a perfect hole drilled through the center. And I went to the lead archaeologist, Dr. Moshe Brunstein, and I said, what's this? And he told me it's a let's see if I get this right, a Sardinian loom weight, and very ancient, over 3,000 years old. There was an encampment there when they were fighting the Israelites, and they would, of course, had weavers with them to repair cloth and make uniforms and shawls and all the things they needed. And so a loom weight, they would tie the string through this hole and let it hang down, and it would tension the strings so that they could get a good straight weave. So the reason I think I saw this before anybody else did was my years as a pilot. You get used to looking down at the ground, identifying check marks, recognizing signs of habitation, what we call non-fractal geometry. And it was if I was at 3,000 feet and was looking down, and I saw this. I thought, my gosh, that's not natural at all. And really right there was kind of the genesis of my wanting to embark and start using these various so-called skills that I've developed over a lifetime in this search for anomalies on Mars and maybe elsewhere too. Anyway, I'm Dave. I'm your host over at MarsX3D, and I hope each one of you are enjoying a peaceful and healthy Christmas season with your loved ones. You picked a good time to join us if this is your first time in MarsX3D. You see, the X3D part, that refers to the special way that you view this video in order to see it, your monitor, like a giant viewmaster, a magic window, so to speak, right onto the surface of Mars in full, frictionless, stereographic 3D. Now, it seems to me that since we view life in large format 3D already every day here on Earth, I don't see any reason we shouldn't do the same on the surface of Mars, especially when we're looking at some of the controversial and baffling sites found all over this devastated planet. There's a link down below where, if you like to, as an average person, you can learn X3D in 2 minutes or so. This past year has seen over 1,500 of you learn X3D and join me on this epic journey, a real-life science fiction detective story. Not only are most of you now expert in 3D viewing, but your suggestions, your comments, and the anomalies you've sent my way have helped me to grow in so many ways. So thanks to each one of you for being an important part of this fascinating puzzle. Now, before we dive in, you should know that every single image has a title showing what I've chosen to call that particular anomaly, plus the name of whomever pointed out that anomaly. If there isn't a name, that means yours truly found it. Along with, of course, the mission and sol number, and also a link where you can go view the original if you wish. In the normal course of this channel, I show you a context view of the area in which the anomaly is found so that you can get an idea of size and distance, orientation, geological context, and so forth. Then I share one or more detailed views, which are usually what we call hypermags, extreme blow-ups of already marginal photos. That means fuzzy pictures sometimes. But it's interesting and Maybe you've already discovered this, that when you view something in X3D, your mind clears things up considerably. Most of what you'll see today are detailed views, the meat and potatoes. That'll keep things short and to the point. Otherwise, this video would be 2 hours long. Is there life on Mars? In my humble opinion, of course there is. I believe that life is the prime directive in our space-time continuum. But finding ironclad proof of it is another matter. Here are a couple examples of what could be life that were found this past year.
For those of you new to the channel, we'll follow the regular format just for this first image, just so you see what we do. Anyway, those spires way off in the background need a little closer look. As we move in just a bit closer, you can see those two spires on the upper left, and that there's something not quite right about them. With a bit more magnification, we can see that there seems to be some kind of fuzzy tangles all over those two spires. When we go to hypermag, you can see what look like to be trees maybe, and vines, growths, hanging all over the place. This, to me, is not a geological formation. Look at the inset, then look at the anomaly. Pretty close, isn't it? Bear in mind, we've found a number of crinoid-type fossils already on Mars. It makes sense, since it was an ocean planet just like Earth. The crinoids on Earth flourished in Middle Cambrian Sea some 300 million years ago, and we even have some that have survived down to the present day. This one apparently didn't.
Yeah, I know. You didn't get to see any miniature Martians, just some fuzzy weeds and what might be a fossil. You know, it's kind of sad, but there are just too many fringe anomaly hunters who see tiny Martians and a multitude of critters in every single blurry little dot they run across. This channel is about raising the bar, bumping the standards of evidence up several notches. And that means the focus is on what I believe to be solid evidence, the kind where you can look at it in X3D and make up your own mind. Something like maybe rock carving. Those of us who have been on this strange quest for a while get the distinct impression that the ancient Martians were masters of stone. This past year, we've run across what I think are some pretty good examples of what appears to be purposeful stone carving. Let's have a look.
I'm back and forth between thinking this is a machine of some kind rather than a carving, mostly because of that big old notch on the top left side. It's just too strange. Why go to all the work and trouble to carve something as intricately as this seems to be carved, then chisel out several 100 pounds of stone from one side? I don't get it. But then there's a whole lot about Mars I don't get. I'm wondering if you see what I see. I see a well-shaped rectangular block with a face on it. It looks like the stylized demon face we see in both Hindu and Tibetan iconography. If you're familiar with that stuff, the big pug nose is a dead giveaway, in my opinion. And take a look at this one. How much more symmetry and form and design do you need? Do you really think the wind and the sand did this? This looks to me like the decorative facade of a building, the corner on one end. And when you take into consideration the perfect 90-degree quarter on the back side, the perfect compound curve over the entire surface, parallel lines, and what seems to be decorative carving at the top edge, It's really hard to believe this wasn't part of a structure at some time. This is the classic all-seeing eye, so well known from our own esoteric traditions, and this find by Neil Spence is one more link tying the ancient Egyptian culture to Mars. See how the pupil seems quite deep going into the rock? The smaller triangle over the pupil appears to have a center point, while the right side of the triangle seems to taper exactly like the Eye of Horus. There appear to be vertical lines of figures just below the triangle. Could they be hieroglyphics? For now, it just remains speculation.
So, with scattered evidence of life and some pretty solid evidence of stone carving, is there anything else that points to intelligence, past or present, on Mars? The consensus so far is that Mars was obliterated in a gigantic nuclear attack some 50 to 150,000 years ago. This according to Dr. John Brandenburg's landmark book, Death on Mars, The Discovery of a Planetary Nuclear Massacre. All available scientific evidence points to a gigantic nuclear holocaust on Mars that obliterated the civilizations and stripped away most of the atmosphere. With the atmosphere nearly gone, the oceans boiled off into space, with significant portions retreating both underground and to the polar ice caps. Even as I speak, the atmosphere still hums with dangerous amounts of xenon-129 and krypton, both of which are products of nuclear fusion and do not occur naturally. Others say the devastation on Mars is a result of planetary near misses, as postulated by Immanuel Velikovsky in his classic book, Worlds in Collision. There is ample geological evidence to support that theory as well, so it might actually be a combination of these two hypotheses. Imagine if Earth met the same fate as Mars. What evidence would future explorers have that mankind ever existed? We know that within 1,000 years, even the tallest skyscrapers, the largest cities, all evidence of mankind will crumble away to nothing. Now, multiply that result by 150 times, 150,000 years, and what do we have left? Only scattered, broken pieces of eroded stone, perhaps some mud fossils and any other hard nuggets that may have escaped oblivion through being buried in soil, sand, or rock. Shifting sand would reveal these remaining nuggets every now and then, only to be buried again almost immediately. What would these look like? I think it would look a lot like this.
We find what appear to be mechanical shapes or devices on the surface many times. And what's interesting about it is that as we flip through these various images coming up, that they all seem to have the same general configuration. Many of them appear to be metallic in nature, reflecting the light like metal does. Others appear to have wheels, knobs, levers, that type of thing. How is it they've survived this long? And if they're rock, why do they appear to be metal? I don't get that part. Anyway, see what you think here as we look at these devices we ran across this past year. And what are you supposed to think when you run across framework with perfect 90-degree angles, with channel work, that type of thing? Is that random erosion? And what about torn and twisted metal, like this piece found by my friend and colleague Terry Burnett? We also found more tubing this year. In fact, we find tubing all the time. But these are a couple of the better examples we ran across this past year. It sure looks mechanical to me. Does that look like a rock? Not so much. Look at this piece of extruded metal gleaming in the sun. It's probably 8 feet or more long and kind of looks like a flattened train rail to me. It has an arched underside, and that means it was meant to fit on top of something, but what? Train rails and other pieces of similar shape are extruded through a die while the metal is in a molten state, kind of like the Play-Doh factory some of you played with as kids. Or adults. I'm not judging. And even though it's blurry, that is a pipe we're looking at right in the center, isn't it? It even has a collar to it like a regular water main or sewer pipe. You know, that looks like a public works project to me. I don't know about you, but I am feeling a little flushed looking at this thing. Here are a couple more pipes, and they appear to be made out of brass, a yellow metal of some kind. I mean, I'm calling them pipes, but they look more like pirate-type, old-style black powder cannons. And you know, the brass is too brittle to be used for cannons, so what exactly are they? Well, it doesn't make sense that it would do anything except maybe handle liquids of some kind, or maybe they're decorative, an embellishment for a building, or perhaps a memorial. As with other anomalies that we catalog each year, more questions are created than answered. This one, in my opinion, is a really important find. The whole item looks like mangled and corroded framework for something electronic, kind of like the housing units for avionics and aircraft. Look at the square end and the circular opening. See all the little pieces on the inside? Then there's that piece of plumbing sticking out at the 8 o'clock position. That almost looks like a gas fitting on the end. And how about that hex nut on the right bottom edge in front? Then there's all these parallel squiggles all over and inside the framework. I don't think I'm reading too much into this one. There are just too many non-fractals present to toss this one off as either a rock or a trick of light and shadow. And what do you do when you find what looks like a diesel engine with its valve cover blown off, lying upside down in the sand to the left? Or how about an exhaust fan still in its frame? Here you can clearly see a rectangular plate resting against a grayish boulder. Attached to the lower portion of this plate is a castered wheel, virtually identical in nature to the inset image. Above it is either a rivet or more likely the place where another identical wheel was attached at one time. In my opinion, this anomaly is exactly what it appears to be, a manufactured analog of our own earthly castering wheels, just like you find on a shopping cart. If we set aside the many theories about the humanoid origin and nature of Mars' ancient inhabitants, it only makes sense that mechanical engineering will solve certain problems a certain way, regardless of the intelligence, alien or otherwise, that engenders that solution. Obviously, if you have mechanical devices, you need to stick them together somehow. Look inside that box. Do you see the nut plate there? The metal part? Not so much, huh? Just a rock? Well, how about my friend Jimmy Roberts? He found this lovely little self-locking, floating, high-temperature nut plate still attached to its piece of metal.
Now, who doesn't have a pen or a pencil handy with them somewhere? If you have a pen, that indicates, or a pencil, or a quill, or even a sharp stick, that indicates an intelligence behind it that has the urge to write. I know that when I first started messing with crayons, I wanted to eat them, but then later I had to learn how to color inside the lines. And you start drawing and you design something in, say, 3 dimensions, and that implies dimensional thinking. And then you try to build something from those three dimensions. And that implies a knowledge of materials and structure and weight and compression, shear loading, torsion loading, things of that nature. Structures indicate a very special kind of intelligence. It's not just cavemen. Structures indicate really advanced intelligence. So anyway, we've looked at some indicators of life, past and present, some pretty good evidence of rock carving and any number of deteriorating machines and pipes and fittings, and you're still a skeptic. That's a healthy thing. So you're thinking to yourself, these are all just rocks. And pareidolia, you know, that $10 word that people trot out to describe our tendency to see bunny rabbits in the clouds. Maybe if there were some toppled buildings or even some standing structures, you could wrap your mind around this whole thing maybe a little bit better. That works for me. Have a look.
Say you're out hiking somewhere in the desert and you run across these items. Now, if you're intellectually honest, what would you say? I'd say, these are pieces of a building, bits of a building. Look at the right angles and the curved portions and the symmetry and the big slab it's sitting on, and no, on second thought, those are just rocks. As you continue your hike across the desert, you run into this block up on the hillside. It's perfectly rectangular, quite large, and it has 3 flawless scalloped scoops taken out of the front. That kind of looks like somebody did that on purpose, doesn't it? As you top the next hill over, you look between 2 rocks, and there about 10 yards away is a perfect cone or cylinder with a pointed top with carvings on it, spheres and evenly spaced bands. And look to the right, there's a wall and another piece of curved stone and a big slab with right angles and even thickness. That also kind of looks like a building that's fallen over, doesn't it? This one, in my opinion, is one of the most important finds of 2020, made by Phil Cox, and what we're looking at, if you can let your eyes adjust into the shadow, is a cinder block wall with mortar in between the blocks. And look, hanging over and in front of it, roots, just hanging there. Maybe they're not roots, maybe they're something else, but whatever this is, it's not natural. As we get to the top of the next hill, we see something about a mile away and put our binoculars up and have a look at a massive wall, perfectly straight top, and a perfect line going down into the valley, and other structures on the front of it. That sure looks like someone built that there, doesn't it? You're into the rocks now, and there's this thing. Look at that square opening, the flat face of the rock, and what is that arrow pointing at? A perfect circle and writing on the inside? I wonder how that happens naturally. Miles away across the valley, on a ridge, a cluster of buildings that shine in the sunlight as if they were made out of metal. Again, miles away, atop another ridge. Is that an observation post? What kind of building is that? Let's finish up today's desert trek with a wonderful find by my friend Jim West. Just look at this immense structure, well over a mile away. See the roof lines, see the other markings on the front of the building, and look to the left, the scalloping, or maybe those are pillars along the cliff, we don't know. But this is also not natural.
Well, you all know what this is, right? It's a pyramid. and sent to me by my friend Billy Carson, who is really going places nowadays. But you know, I've been into pyramids long before it was hip or cool. Back in the early 70s, I had read the book Pyramid Power by G. Pat Flanagan, and I was living in Mexico, and I built my own pyramid and lived in it for months. And subsequently, when I moved to Florida, I built another pyramid. And as a matter of fact, I lived in pyramids for quite a long time and had some really, really interesting experiences with them. And of course, G. Pat Flanagan, what a great mixture of obtuse and genius and snake oil salesman. I love the guy, and I still use his technology today. His various sensors and other things have been a part of my life for over 40 years, 45 years now. And so pyramids, they're kind of important to me. Anyway, you know, the ruins at Göbekli, let me try that again, Göbekli Tepe. Try saying that fast. They're considered to be, by mainstream archaeology, the oldest structures on Earth. This huge complex was purposely buried some 12,000 years ago and only rediscovered back in 1994. However, new dating methods by geologists, and in particular by the astronomical and geophysical research of Graham Hancock, have pushed the construction dates for the Great Pyramid of Giza back to around 50,000 years ago, easily making it the most ancient structure known on the planet. And not only that, but massive pyramids that dwarf Giza are found all over the world, in Yugoslavia, China, Mexico, and elsewhere. There's something about pyramids. Some say they're part of a global zero-point power grid, an ancient one. Others that they're essential to initiation and ascension into the esoteric realm. Whatever they are, they're a universal constant on Earth and are found in a multitude of cultures separated by millennia and miles. Funny thing is, they're also found all over Mars. Some are so huge, they make Giza look like an anthill. Others remind us of similar pyramids found in Egypt, and even the Mayan and Aztec pyramids of Central America. Scores of pyramids are being uncovered on Mars each year. These are some that popped up just recently.
Let's start out with the classic Black Pyramid, pointed out by Neville Thompson a couple years back. The reason we're putting this in where it's not from this year, but I want to get you started with seeing the different shapes that we find there. And as you can see from the inset, this looks a lot like a Mayan pyramid. Wouldn't you love to dig this one out of the sand? Look at those steps, the side rails, the carvings to the left, the platform, and there are other buildings scattered all around. Here's another one that was maybe 1 or 2 miles away from the rover. And actually, can you tell me any natural formations that have those borders perfectly even and parallel going around the edges? I'll wait. Now that's what I call a match. Egypt's bent pyramid is in the color inset. Mars' bent pyramid is staring you in the face, separated at birth, so to speak, except the one on Mars is a whole lot older than the one at the Royal Necropolis of Dashur. Just look at all the structures and buildings surrounding the pyramid. This was a busy and important area back before Mars got thrown in a blender. Here's a hyper zoom, super high magnification. This cluster of pyramids was several miles away, and yet you can still see not only the 3 pyramids, but that they have porticos, doorways, columns, courtyards, all manner of structural things that should not be there if it's a natural formation. The good news about NASA is they figure we don't look at the horizons. And indeed, if you look at the original photo for this, you can't see them at all. They're just a speck on the horizon. But if you take the time to zoom in, you can find some things that they overlook. And this one, I think, is a real beauty. My friend Jim West shared this with us about a week or two ago, and I did a lot of work on it, getting in. It's another super zoom. I mean, you go to the original image and you can't even see this. It's just literally a dot on the image, but you go in there, and if you're patient and you don't horse around too much, you can bring out some detail that is really pretty interesting. I mean, look at the framework, and look at the ledge, and look at the structures below it, and look at the star-shaped item that's lying in front of it. I mean, this is really remarkable. And I think anybody looking at this and thinking that it's a natural formation maybe needs to take a trip to the optometrist. So that's it for this year 2020. And one will be glad to watch go away in our rearview mirror. Except we did get a lot of really interesting anomalies this year. I could have included dozens more, but even in trying to keep this short, it still went kind of long, didn't it? But thank you for your patience. So here are my 3 picks for what I feel are the 3 most important images of the year. This one being the cinder blocks found by Phil Cox. The implications of this image are amazing. The materials engineering and technology involved in making cinder blocks, shaping them, extruding them, pouring them, stacking them, the mortar, the chemical engineering, the fact that it's a wall, a constructed wall, and then the fact that there is a tangle of roots coming out over it and draped down over it. Well, even if those aren't roots, maybe there's some kind of subflooring. Maybe it's all tattered subcarpet that went on top of the floor. Who knows? Just speculation. But this picture is heavy with implications, and I congratulate Phil Cox for this particularly noteworthy find. This castering wheel is, in my opinion, just about as clear as it's ever going to get for intelligent agency on Mars. Now, who knows what's going to come up with not only the new images coming from Curiosity, but then the Perseverance rover as well, which is fixing to go active later in 21. So we will see. Maybe NASA will be up to its old tricks again of obfuscating, hiding, copy-pasting sand, rockifying, do all the things that they're doing now with our publicly funded images that they're publishing on the web. But for the meantime, this one caps it for me. And finally, this remarkable pyramid found by my friend Jim West is, in my opinion, one of the finest of many very, very fine pyramid images that we have gleaned from the Martian surface. The internal structures, the artifacts in front of it, its location, everything about this image is superlative and indicates, in fact, it shouts intelligent agency. So I want to thank you for being part of our journey this year. We have had so many great experiences. We're looking forward to more. It's going to be a banner year. We're going to be changing a few things up, all for the good, I hope. And meanwhile, a Merry Christmas and a prosperous and healthy New Year to each and every one of you. This is your buddy Dave over at MarsX3D. Be well.